Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. This is News Check on the Tuesday of the 18th of July 2023. We are carrying on with our conversation today. It's all about dialogue. That has been the clarion call from religious leaders and other key stakeholders in the country. And that is why we're asking you, dear viewer, you can carry on, of course, with this particular conversation, both on and offline. Should the government engage in the opposition with dialogue? Should the government engage the opposition in dialogue? That is the main question on the viewpoint. Should the government engage the opposition in dialogue? Of course, talk to us on our social media platforms at KBC Channel 1, at Abiaziz, Hashim, and of course, my guests are with me here this particular morning. Let me get to introduce them once more. If you're just joining us, we have Alenga, Torosterdt, a political analyst. We also have Advice Mundalo, the National Youth Chair of the Jubilee Party, and Honorable Charles Nguna, Mwingi West Member of Parliament. Of course, that is our main conversation this particular morning. Let me come to you, Mheshimiwa. You wanted to talk on this particular issue that has been raised by Advice there in terms of the blame game. We have seen a lot of the blame games going around to the legislators, to the police, to the government, to the opposition. Is it not high time we stop this blame game and, of course, start carrying on this particular conversation?
With all due respect I have with my leaders, the lead of majority, the lead of minority, I still believe the bipartisan talk was the way forward, but it was an idea that was not well conceptualized. We can't expect politicians to sort out peaceful dialogue with anybody. And I will still continue stating, we need people who have been there and have seen it all, and people who have really brokered peace deals, diplomatic people who can actually give the president ideas on how to quell the issues opposition leader is raising, and they are very pertinent issues. Composition of IBC first. We have seen a serious crisis in that commission. So far, there are several upcoming by-elections that nobody can conduct it. We lost a member of parliament recently in northern Kenya. And those people are not being represented in parliament. We should have done by-elections a long time ago. So that one we have not agreed, and we are doing injustice in this country. For that section of constituency we are talking about. Most of the people even who did the by-elections for MCAs, and they never got paid because there is no properly constituted commission. So these are pertinent issues the opposition leader has been raising. The issue of high cost of living, it's a pain experience globally. And as a country, we can actually come up with something that will manage the economy. I've talked of the managing of macroeconomic variables. Where is it that the shilling is only one losing value against all even the neighboring countries, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda? Why is it that it's only our shilling which is becoming unstable?
Mheshimiwa.
Yeah, this is the first time we are seeing dollar eating at 142.
Mheshimiwa.
Pounds 182. I've never seen it before. These are some of the things we need to ask ourselves. How can we do better than what we are doing?
I'll be coming back to you. Sorry for that. Of course, I'll let you finish your trail of thought there and come to you, Alenga. You can see the fear that and the tension that causes many of our business operators to shut down their businesses on a day like tomorrow. What will be the economic impact on such kind of a situation? You do know that the capital is dependent on solely when it comes to the gross domestic product of the country.
Abiaziz, a few things to pick from the previous conversation we had before I can tackle that question. We were asking ourselves, is there any prospects that are coming from the protests that are happening that will change anything, that would even lower the cost of living? We must understand first and foremost that the cost of living, the high cost of living that we're experiencing today is because of the introduction of the new taxes that have hit us so hard. It's like the government is now punishing even those who are employed. It's like it's wrong to be employed, you know. And right now we are having a state agency, EPRA, that has increased the fuel prices to reflect 16% VAT, despite a court ruling being in place to stop the implementation of the 16% VAT. So that's where we are operating from. Once you increase the price of fuel, you have literally increased the price of everything, because it affects all the way to the consumer price index. So right now the government cannot find another explanation why the cost of living is high, and therefore we need an explanation from them. You cannot tell us that it's the handshake brothers when you're the one who has calibrated the VAT upwards from 8% to 16%. You're trying to tell us that it has no impact on the CPI. It does have, and that is where we are at the moment. Number two, it is interesting and quite obnoxious to see how this country, or the leadership of this country, reasons and thinks through things. It is easy for the country, for the leadership and those who are apologetic for the leadership to tell us how many people died in the protests. It's easy for them to count the people who died in the protest, but then they conveniently refuse to admit that all these people were shot by police bullets. It is convenient for them to refuse to admit that these people that were shot, you've seen what the journalistic work that was done around the people that were shot in the protests. They were not even protesting. Some of them were young people, you know. Some of them were school-going children, you know, like the girl shot in Kitengela. She was coming from lunch back to class, and she was shot. So when will it take the government to understand that their high-handedness may not sail through perfectly, you know? And if we continue to say, what will, and I have had this question quite a lot, how is the protest going to lower the high cost of living? We have been here before, Abiaziz. And perhaps those who are not there can actually say there's no premium, there's no benefit of these protests we have. In the past, when we were fighting to only have more than one party participating in an election, it was a struggle. It took about 3 years of fighting on the streets for that government, that regime of President Moi, to say, well, I repealed Section 2A. You can imagine. And it was not something much that citizens were asking. We were just asking, can we have more than KANU participating in elections? Number two, we had to push for the new constitution through sweat and blood. Even this concept of devolution that we have today, did you know that at some point in this country, it was even criminal to discuss devolution, what was called majimbo? It was a criminal offense to even discuss majimbo, which we now, after fighting for that new constitution, then we entrenched it into the constitution. Today, many parts of the country that wouldn't have had a road now have a road courtesy of devolution. So these demonstrations are effectively going to work, because when a government refuses to listen to people through their elected representatives, Article 1 of the Constitution gives us a mandate to now go as the people directly and exercise our rule. And this Article 1 of our Constitution agrees with Article 1 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Article 1. It also gives us a right to self-determination. And these are instruments that the government has signed and ratified, so they are clearly applicable. What we have to say about tomorrow, Thursday and Friday, the government has issued their ultimatum that no one is going to protest. The government is challenging Article 37 of the Constitution. There is even a legislator who actually said we must now test Article 37 of the Constitution. How are we testing it? This government is full of people that are not alive to the Constitution. Article 37 of the Constitution has been adjudicated in the courts already, and the court gave a verdict that they cannot abrogate the rights within Article 37. And when we come to the entire concept of how will demonstrations happen, and what is the end game, and what happens thereafter, the government has said no one will protest. The other side of the divide has said we are going to express ourselves on the streets. So the government must understand this. Whether the protests physically happen or they don't happen, by dint that they have warned citizens from coming out to participate in the demos, that means Nobody will go to work tomorrow. No children will go to school tomorrow. No business will be open tomorrow, because you cannot open your shop and wait for a showdown between government protesters and opposition protesters. Who wants to see that? So ideally, government is fueling up the issue instead of bringing it down.
Okay.
What do we have the police to do in order to grant us a right that already the Constitution gives us?
But Alenga, don't you think they have to be there to protect those business operators?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let them protect business. And protecting business does not mean that you tear gas people, cause mayhem, people run helter-skelter, and that is when they can now pick someone's purse, they can pick someone's phone, because they are taking advantage of that moment of chaos.
Okay.
That is what the police need to be alive to. But again, a very important discussion that came up yesterday is that the police are complaining they're also tired. They are tired of running around. So you can imagine what will happen by Friday.
We'll wait for the official authorization from the Inspector General of Police to address us on that. In that particular meeting, we also had that. But let me come to advice. The question that I had posed earlier to Alenga, the economic impact that we'll be facing in the country if we see our shops closed, especially here in the capital, what is the likely outcome of that?
It is obvious, Abiaziz, that we will have a crunch down on the economy tomorrow, because true fact that businesses will actually not open. Most of the people will not wake up to go to their places of work. Most of the business people will actually not open, and that is going to have a direct impact on our economy. I don't even think it has to wait until tomorrow, yeah, because even from the beginning of week, when the week starts from Tuesday and whatever, people start narrowing down. There starts being the slow progress in business. Remember, we are supposed to have tourists in the country.
Yes.
The moment we have this grandstanding from both government and opposition, we have reduced numbers of people who are actually willing to come into the country. Look at the number of investors who would be willing to actually invest into this country. When we start having scenes like those that happened at the expressway, where without the police, we can see what is called demonstrators just pulling down sections of the expressway to what the cabinet secretary estimated to cost about 700 million. So it's obvious that there will be an impact on the economy. It is obvious that the economy will struggle from tomorrow, because true word, once Raila Odinga, the opposition leader, says we have demonstrations, and the president also puts up the same energy, then definitely the country goes on a go-slow. But then the question is this the direction we really want to take as a country? Because it would be better. My problem, Abiaziz, has always been that if at the end of the day there will be a conversation that will bring this to an end, then the question is, why would people have to suffer all this time for people to have a negotiation sometime in the future? Why can't they have it very early? Because remember, the former Prime Minister together with the President were watching a football match together just a few days ago. These are people who know each other. The President has actually been a student of the politics of Raila Odinga. That is according to himself. And even at some point I saw CS Kipchumba Murkomen allude to the same fact. So it is not like we're talking about strangers here. We're talking about people who know each other. So why would we take the country down the drain only for us to have a conversation later on? And this conversation, even the nature of this conversation, is something that we should also discuss. Remember, Abiaziz, this country has members of parliament, yeah, up to almost I think 300 in the National Assembly, in the Senate. We have governors. We have many people like Mheshimiwa here who are elected. It is not obvious that today everyone in his constituency agrees with what he is doing today. It is not obvious that everyone he defeated does not agrees with what he's doing today. Yes. But those people are not causing demonstrations in his constituency and forcing him to have a conversation with them. So we cannot have a culture in the country where at the end of the day, after every election, we push the country into a conversation that there must be a crisis about something. I was in the Azimio campaign. We did the best we could have done at that time. We thought we had won election. We went to the Supreme Court. Those are the institutions that we have in the country. We presented what we called the lorries of evidence. It is unfortunate that it did not go away. We might not agree with the decision, but that is the institution that is bestowed upon that mandate at that time. So what we have to do is that the country must move forward. So we must be able to, first of all, accept that, first of all, we have this government. What is even causing more ground standing is the moment we keep saying we do not recognize the president, and we keep saying the president is in office illegitimately, and we keep saying we need the servers open, we are arousing conversations that do not have an end game. Let us just accept that, first of all, there is a government and it's legitimate because our institutions have actually affirmed to that.
Okay.
Yeah? And whether we refuse it, go to the street, it doesn't change anything. So from there, then, can we then have a conversation? But then the issue of just saying that, pushing government that the president must have a conversation around power deals together with opposition. Abiaziz, we have so many people who are elected in this country. Some lost elections. I know of a member of parliament who actually lost his seat by just about 96 votes.
Oh my God.
The person who lost that seat is not busy trying to cause chaos around the constituency and trying to disagree with him in a manner that they must be able to sit and share the constituency. So we must be able to come from that realization.
Okay.
What the pertinent issues that the former Prime Minister is raising are very pertinent to the country. It is true. But it's also true that we have been together to defend some of those issues. The fact that the Kenyans are struggling today does not mean we as politicians and leaders should take advantage and just ride on their suffering for political expediency. Because what is happening today is most of the things that are happening are purely for political expediency. We are riding on the backs of suffering Kenyans just for our own political goodwill, which is extremely unfortunate. Yeah.
Okay, let me come to you, Mheshimiwa, as you react on that. I've seen some of the comments that are being made online. People are asking you, you're a legislator in the National Assembly. You have been elected by the constituent of Mwingi West as a member of parliament, Mheshimiwa. What proposal can you bring to the parliament to alleviate on some of these issues that are being raised by Azimio? They are legitimate, but what are the legal provisions you can bring to the floor of the House to alleviate Kenyans from facing these particular issues?
You know, the issue of everything, the rise in cost is the issue of inflation. And if you look at our economy, right now, inflation is not being fueled by what we call demand pull or cost push. Inflation in our country right now is being fueled by the monetary and fiscal policies at the moment. And one of them is just the recent finance bill, which is really fueling inflation and cost of the it has a serious multiplier impact on CPI, consumer price index.
Yes.
Those are some of the things we cannot ignore. So at the moment, the high cost of living is being fueled by the monetary and fiscal policies. That doesn't need a legislation. It needs only the right people in the ministry, in the executive, to manage the economy by coming up with favorable monetary and economic policies. We don't need a piece of legislation or now to bring down the cost of living. Secondly, we need only the president to do what we call proper consultation to increase the production of all the costs of the produce we are currently doing in our country. If we increase the incentives and also offer a favorable economic kind of an environment to our people, we will increase the foreign direct investments automatically. And this one will bring the cost of living. That's why I was calling upon the president now to stop rewarding people who supported him and start looking for the talents, people who have got technical know-how on how to manage the economy. And especially, I'm emphasizing on the issue of the macroeconomic variables here, exchange rate, inflation, monetary and fiscal policies. Those things are need to be handled with technical know-how. I've not seen in the cabinet a person, and I'm not actually criticizing the government here, I've not seen in the cabinet a person who has got capacity and credentials and ability to technically restore our economy to where it used to be at the moment. Most of the people are focusing on political issues more than monetary and fiscal policies, and that's why I will still insist on doing the right way for the president. So far, there's a lot of things that needs to be fixed at the moment. So we need we need also to fix our political issue, which is also another factor which is playing significantly towards the increase in CPI. Most of the commodities in our market right now, most of the countries are seeing Kenya as a politically risky country to invest. Who is that investor who is coming from other countries to come and inject money into our economy only to suffer from loss? This taxation issue was also in the priority. Priority was to, in fact, I think we should have reduced our cost of fuel, because if you increase the cost of fuel, the CPI automatically will go across, will go high. We should have actually reduced taxes on oil instead of adding the 8%. If I wish even we can go to almost 2% instead of 16%, you could have seen automatically the economy could have felt positively. The inflation could have gone down if we actually did the fuel rate to 2% or 5% or gone lower than 8% we had previously. So, Abiaziz, this is purely monetary and fiscal policies trying to interfere with inflation in this country, which is significantly hampering the gain actually to reduce the cost of living. I'm talking on economic perspective on this. And it is true, we need an executive that is understanding the technical know-how on how to handle the high cost of living at the moment.
Okay, let me come to you, Alenga. The political parties dispute tribunal yesterday was saying the conversation should start with the Kriegler report. We have been having those kind of report, the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation report as well. Don't you think that will be the starting point for these negotiations to even kick off?
I think, Abiaziz, that's just trying to fetch water on a sieve, because ideally the people who control, the people who are indicted in that particular report are still in government. So you do not expect people that are indicted to be the ones implementing a report, you know. So ideally, these are things maybe we will have to wait until at such a time where the political environment is favorable for us to interrogate those reports. And as long as those reports sit there, it is not lost. We will revisit those reports when the right time comes. Number two, it is important for us to state categorically that we do not have a problem with President William Ruto being the president of Kenya. Actually, anyone can be president, but we have a problem with the government doing the right thing. That's where the problem is. So when people are going to the protest, nobody should characterize this as a Raila Odinga conversation, because when you narrow or trivialize the bigger issue that the bigger issues that Kenyans are having to a contest between Raila and Ruto, you lose the point. And that is what I have seen with so many people that are apologetic of the current government. They narrow the debate there, and that is not even the point. Last Wednesday, Raila did not even address anyone. He cancelled the Kamukunji rally, but didn't protest go on, or they didn't. Kenyans are raising legitimate issues. Can this government just stop being arrogant and ask themselves, is the high cost of, is the cost of living high? Is it difficult to educate somebody today? Is it difficult to get a meal on the table today? Is it difficult to even be in business today? Those businesses they are talking about, that nobody's business will be broken down. Does the government know how many industries have closed down since they took over? Does the government know how many people have closed down their businesses due to the raise of the importation rates up to 35%? I mean, those are the legitimate issues that Kenyans are asking for. Does the government understand what that calibration upwards from 8% of VAT to 16% has cost on us as Kenyans? Now, if they keep seeing Raila in everything, they will not see our plight. And that is why Kenyans are going to the street to tell them, it is us speaking to you. It is not Raila. Raila cannot be everywhere. He can only be at one particular place. But when you are having demonstrations across the country, people are trying to communicate to a government they elected. And this government has completely refused to listen to us. Okay. What option there lies for us? The option then is to invoke Article 1 of the Constitution for self-determination. Try to ask these things ourselves. You know what has happened in the parliament, Abiaziz? We got into the parliament. First of all, there was a debate between who had the majority and the minority in parliament. And you had a whole transfer of 7 MPs leaving the opposition to go into the government to give them a super majority. When you go to this parliament, what can you pitch as a member of parliament from the minority side? Nothing. As we are speaking today, the government has taken the leader of the minority leader in the parliament, Sabina Shegia, who sits now with them. Is the one who is supposed to. She's the one who is supposed to be whipping his side of the divide in a particular direction to vote. But is she available for that duty? No. Courtesy of what? Being bought by the government side.
But you can't blame the government.
Then
Alenga,
you refer us to parliament.
Yes.
What can we get there? This same parliament that we are talking about is the one that is now currently debating how to change Article 37, how to amend Article 37, as if that is the most urgent issue that we have as a country. Look at it today. Last month, Abiaziz, Kenya signed a very critical agreement, a very critical trade agreement with the EU. That particular Kenya-EU EPA has clauses that are detriment to the development of the entire East African region. So we have a government that is even jeopardizing the economy of an entire region. If you read that particular agreement that was signed by our CS, the able prophet Moses Kuria, who has prophesied the death of someone, that agreement digs deep into our economy. It compromises our trade, even the same businesses they are saying. You can imagine, we signed a trade agreement that allows Kenya to trade with the EU only with flowers, fruits and vegetables. But then it gives the EU express importation into our country. So local manufacturers have to compete with the EU in our own market. And then it now compromises and even offends Article 37D of the East African laws, the East African Commission laws. How are we going to explain to Burundi, which didn't sign the EPA, how products from the EU are going to enter into their market and fight on the same level with producers from their country? How are we going to explain to Uganda, Tanzania, Burundi, Rwanda and the other parties of the East African community? We have a government that is running everything by fiat, very little conversations, very little consultation. How far can we go?
Point of correction, Alenga. She went there voluntarily. Nobody forced her to go to the other side of the political aisle.
We've been here before.
of the political aisle. That's a conversation for another day.
There's no free lunch.
Yes, let me head over to advice, given that we're entering the final leg of this particular program. So I asked initially earlier advice. There's this particular Kriegler report. There's this Truth and Justice and Reconciliation reports. There were nice recommendations that were in there. Should that be the starting point of this conversation between the government and the opposition?
Abiaziz, anything that has a solution to this country is something that must be considered and should stand a chance to be considered. The first thing we need is, first of all, the political goodwill and the honesty that we really want to have a solution. Whether we go for the Kriegler report or whatever the report, we first of all must be honest that we want to first of all have a solution. The president formed the bipartisan committee. That was a constitutional body. It has elected leaders of this country who have a mandate to serve by the people. Remember, we cannot all go to parliament, and that's why we have people like Mheshimiwa here to represent us in parliament. All of us cannot be there. So those people who are in parliament, we are supposed to believe that they carry our hopes and aspirations. And that is why the bipartisan committee was formed, that they can be able to have a sit down and let us raise issues from both sides. Azimio raised 5 issues and Kenya Kwanza raised 7 issues. Now these were the issues to be canvassed for practical solutions, because we have to stop taking the country in what at some point the judiciary called the wild goose chase. Because at some point, we are actually just taking the country through some chess game, political optics, and things that will actually not have anything tangible at the end of the day. And that is not fair. We have this team, we have this bipartisan committee. Whatever is in the Kriegler report, whatever is in any other report can be adopted, and we can be able to move forward. Because through this body here, which is the bipartisan committee, we can have a practical and realistic solution. But the more we are able to look for avenues that at the end of the day, they do not add anything to the table. They just are able to make us look good politically. Because one of the best things, Abiaziz, is to be in the opposition, because it's a very simple job. Your job is simply to oppose. You do not necessarily have to come up with anything. You simply oppose. And it's not every day that governments are popular anywhere in the world. So opposition work is very simple work. And so the last time there was the talk of we will come up with an alternative bill to the finance bill. We never saw it see the light of day. So at the end of the day, let us not, is opposition really realistic and practical in terms of, do we both want this government to succeed in the first place? Because it should be practical that all of us should want the government to succeed. Because this government carries both the people who voted the opposition and those ones who voted for the government. The difference is actually just about 200,000 people. So both of us should actually first of all start from the place of, we want the government to succeed. The moment both of us want the government to succeed, we will become practical with our solutions. But most of the time, we want to portray as though we want to speak for the people, but when we have the real place where we are supposed to speak for the people, we say it lacks political goodwill and coin a few other conundrum and a few other words and run away from the reality. So that again, we go back to the same issue because we are simply not interested in solutions. I fail to imagine and agree that the country has a president who wants his people to suffer. I don't think any elected leader, members of parliament, was elected and their end game is to see their people suffer. Everyone who has been given a mandate by the people, the president, the governors, the senators, the members of parliament, at the end of the day, everyone wants to see the people succeed. Why? Because when the people succeed, even your re-election is guaranteed. The president is serving his first term. It is in his interest that this country moves the right way. It is in his interest that the country moves in the right manner and that the country is able to succeed. When we frame it as though the president is trying to ensure that the country fails, this president needs a second term. Why would he do that? So first of all, let us first come with the reality that in our conversation, let us first of all be practical and realistic, that both of us want success. Because I can assure you, Abiaziz, most of us do not actually want success. We have people who are not interested in success. We have people who are interested in government failing because that is what holds their election bid and manifesto in the next election. And that is the problem. Yeah.
Maybe coming to you, Mheshimiwa, what can be done to create that good political goodwill? Yes, the opposition has their stance and the government has their stance. The blame game can continue, but what can we do to create that good political goodwill to bring this conversation to the table?
Number one, stop this imposing attitude we are seeing carried with Kenya Kwanza. Learn to listen, and I have stated again, a leader who doesn't listen will eventually be surrounded by people who have got nothing to say. Stop listening so much to your people who supported you, but start listening to the majority of the country. If I was Ruto, I would not ignore the voices of Raila. Because clearly, if we believe the elections were won by 7.1 million against 6.9, you cannot ignore that person. Just swallow the pride. Sit down with a dialogue with the person who is bringing these issues. Stop listening to the inexperienced members of parliament who have been appointed to hold bipartisan agreements, and we will have a nation that is working. If I was the president today, I will not actually allow demonstrations tomorrow. I'll call the president, the Kiongozi, the Raila, today to sit down and institute dialogue today. Because the impact of tomorrow's demonstration is so huge it will leave the country's economy to tattered places, and we don't want to accept that. Tomorrow, any demonstration is going to be held tomorrow. It will significantly affect our currency. I can assure you the dollar will trade at 142 tomorrow. By just declaration, there will be demonstration. I can assure you that one will have a serious implication on consumer price index across all the sectors. Everything tomorrow in Kenya is going to go up if we are going to have demonstrations. You will see a packet of Uga retailing at over 250 now. These are not the solutions. These are not the things actually we need in our country. We need a stable political, economic, and social fabric to forge ahead as a country. But that one, it is in the hands of the president to show leadership, but not to listen. Sometimes you people surrounding you, you have to ignore them and do what is right for the country. Even in my constituency, there are times I just totally have to define myself and stand firm and go against people who are supporting me for the betterment of the livelihood of our people. So at the moment, let the president stop listening to this, some of these people misleading him, and let us do away with imposing attitude and character, and we will have a peaceful nation if we listen.
Okay, Alenga, so we have established that it is in the best interest of everybody, including the government, the opposition, and Kenyans alike, that we would like to come to the table. Tomorrow we do hope that that will be the case, but the same question that I've just imposed on Mheshimiwa, what should we do to create that good political goodwill and that safe environment to bring all those leaders together?
Number one, Abiaziz, drive the conversation away from Raila Odinga. He's not the reason why Kenyans are on the streets. Us who believe that it's difficult to live in this country do not want anything to do with with power sharing. We do not want anything to do with a deal that maybe gives somebody a job in the government. We do not want that. We want, number one, the repeal of the finance bill. Put it aside. Discuss it afresh with the views of Kenyans. This bill was subjected to public memorandum, and there were 1,000 memorandum that came from the public, and 970 of them were against the bill. So where did you get the will that this thing is popular amongst the people? Put it aside and discuss it afresh, and then you can bring it one more time. You know, number two, the cost of living. Number three, education has become very costly in this country. Abiaziz, right now as we're speaking, universities have reviewed university fees. And right now, even for some of us who are supporting maybe people here and there, it's difficult. It's becoming extremely difficult. When you look at even the deductions that are coming to our pay slips, it's like the government is literally not happy with us who are maybe working to get something for our families. We are being taxed left, right, and center. All those things have nothing to do with servers. They have nothing to do with Raila Odinga. Even if Raila Odinga ceased to be here tomorrow, we will still have those complaints. So government should focus on what we are complaining as Kenyans, fix those problems. If government says that it's coming to protect businesses, let it protect businesses. And that protecting businesses does not mean pumping bullets into taxpayers. You know, we cannot be paying to have our citizens killed by the police. We have to re-examine how are people dying in this protest. That is a silent conversation that we are not talking about. People are not dying because they are running and hitting themselves on telephone poles. They are dying because they are being hit by police bullets. Address police brutality. Those are the things that will set the ground for us to talk, for people to discuss what do we have to do. And then primarily, we cannot have a contest all the time. You know, instead of just lowering down our our tempers and sitting down to talk and see what are the issues here and there. We have relegated ourselves to kindergarten contests of my father can beat your father. You know, so it's like the people in the majority are saying like, oh, you know, you can't have demonstrations because the president has said this, and the other people are saying we will be on the streets to see whether you can deny us Article 37 or not. So where do we put ourselves? We put ourselves in a contest that has nothing to benefit anyone. Abiaziz, if this country goes down because we are having a governance issue, it goes down for everyone. There's nobody that will survive. Even those who are sitting in offices as maybe CS or PS, and they think we have to pass everything that this government says. Even those who are sitting in parliament on the majority side, and they're like, we have to pass everything this government says, like it has been issued by the Son of God himself. That is going to come to an end if we lose this country. So what do we have to do as leaders? What do we have to do as Kenyans? Let us understand, number one, government just has to understand the issues that we have. The issues are legitimate, and we have to discuss them. Once we bring a framework that we can discuss those issues, we can discuss the cost of living, we can discuss how to lower it, because the problem we are having right now, government has not demonstrated how it is trying to lower the cost of living. They are giving us the problem statement, which we all know. We are feeling it in our houses that the cost of living is extraordinarily high. But now, what is government supplying as solutions? Even if they were piecemeal, even if they were small, but what are those kind of solutions? Because if you continue pumping taxes to me, and I am telling you that I am unable to live in this country, I am unable to sustain my family in Nairobi, what do you want?
Okay, maybe advice, let me give you just a minute. Of course, has now, given that we have only 24 hours until that particular procession, and we've just heard from Mheshimiwa, we're all in agreed here that the situation will be dire, not just for the country economically, but for the lives of many Kenyans. Should now both the leaders, the opposition and the government-led coalition now sit down? In a minute.
I think for me, allow me speak to the question of the young people of this country. That most of the time, and all the time in this country, political processes, it is the young people who are put on the forefront. During campaigns, during political mobilization, it is the young people who are put on the forefront. Today, during demonstrations, it is again the young people who are on the forefront. The question is, when at the end of the day, push comes to shove, and then there is something at the table. At the dinner table, where is the space of the young people? The young people are rarely included when it is now time to harvest. When it will be time for now people to sit down at the table after these demonstrations, where will be the space of the young people? And so that's why I'm saying, for me, I would speak to young people and say, beginning tomorrow and the demonstrations going forward, it is important for us to be very careful in everything that we undertake. We should know that at the end of the day, risking our lives for the sake of leaders who will not care about us tomorrow is not going to help us. It is going to pay us. So let the young people try as much as possible to not put themselves in line of fire for once, because what the people, I kept saying from the beginning, 20 people who died were all the young people. And remember, young people died and we don't know by their name. But there was an attempt to arrest a leader somewhere in Busia, and that formed a headline for the whole day, just because a leader was about to be arrested. But when the young people die, there is no headline that is formed about them. So let us be careful about ourselves, and let us put ourselves first, and let us be able to know that at the end of the day, let us put our interests first. And if we must have a country tomorrow, if we must benefit from anything tomorrow, we must be alive first. Thank you very much.
So much. That is advice Mundalo, the National Youth Chair of the Jubilee Party on the far end. In the middle, that is Alenga, Torosterdt, political analyst. And finally, Honorable Charles Nguna, Mwingi West, Member of Parliament. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. This is a conversation that we could carry on till tomorrow, but we have to, of course, close this particular discussion. That has been our show. Apologies to our dear viewers. You have sent a lot of comments, a lot of concerns here, but I cannot go through them given that we are out of time. The government should come to the table. The opposition, of course, should also have an open ear to these particular issues. That is the bone of contention this particular afternoon. And of course, that will form also our conversation tomorrow, where we'll be having religious leaders, of course, to also have their say. My name is Abiaziz Hashim. Our sign language interpreter this particular afternoon has been Lensa Odingo. Don't go too far. My colleague Nancy Okware is up next with Tamrini. Good afternoon.